What a crazy game. I mean, that was really entertaining. Even if you hate both of these teams, that was an incredible game. Alabama beats Georgia 41-34 in Tuscaloosa. Kalen DeBoer's first big game in the SEC, and his team wins. His team wins 41-34. Dive into this game in just a second. Welcome to the channel. I'm Brian. I'm glad you're here. I know I've got my Clemson garb all around me, and you're like, what's this idiot doing? Well, this idiot's talking about college football because I love talking about college football. I'm sure you do too. So if you like getting all worked up, maybe even in fistfights, you punch old women in the face because they said something about your football team, this is your channel. I hope you're not hitting old women over football. Hope you'll subscribe. It is free. When you think of Alabama and Georgia, you think about the two teams who has not only owned the SEC over the past 10 years, given some time to one team more than the other, but you also think about two teams who's really dominated college football as a whole for a while now. So you have Kirby Smart going back to Tuscaloosa, coaching against a team that was once his employer. We know how that story was, but we know how that story has worked out at this point. You have Kalen DeBoer, a guy who's an extremely talented coach, but he's been in that whole Pacific Northwest style of football, and let's be honest with ourselves, a lot of times that has not translated very well for other coaches who has went namely into the SEC. So a lot of eyes were on this game for a lot of reasons. You have the two big brands of Alabama and Georgia. I mean, you just have those two big, massive names that's owned things for a while now going head to head, but you also have the added attention of Kalen DeBoer, not Nick Saban. Georgia was the favorite in this ball game. I even picked them to win by a touchdown or less, but I said that I would not be shocked if Alabama won the ball game. And early on, it was hilarious because Alabama was up at one time 21-0. In fact, they were up 28-0, and then Georgia scored, and at halftime it was 30-7 Alabama. It looked like they were going to absolutely murder the Georgia Bulldogs. In the second half, it got really interesting. Georgia actually took the lead on an incredible pass from Carson Beck, and he hit, just want to make sure I get the name right, Arian Smith. I wanted to say Arian Smith, but I wanted to make sure it was Arian Smith on the long play. Milroe turns right back around on the very next play, and he hits the 17-year-old freshman Ryan Williams on a magical touchdown right after that. They reclaimed the lead. It ended up being the final score, 41-34. But this game was crazy. It had its ups and downs. And if there's one thing that I can say, is that both of these teams, obviously Georgia being down as much as what they were down by at one time, they showed their weakness. Alabama showed their weakness in the second half. Now, I don't want to take away from what Georgia did, but they showed their weakness in the second half of allowing themselves to become too comfortable, maybe not finishing, allowing Georgia to come back. So kudos to Georgia for showing their fight, their want, their desire to stay in the game. They didn't lay down and die and go, we lost. No, they came all the way back, took the lead back. So with the playoff being triple the size, not double the size, triple the size, Georgia's going to have to do something really bad to not get in. So even though you want to win a lot of your games, even though you want to get to your conference championship, Georgia stands a great chance, even with this loss, of still getting into the college football playoff. Let's talk about both quarterbacks. When you think of Carson Beck and Jalen Milroe, you think of two totally different types of quarterbacks. Carson Beck was 27 of 50 for 439 yards. All right. Let's go to Jalen Milroe on the other hand. This guy was 27 of 33, 374 yards. Add in there, he rushed the ball 16 times for 117 yards on the ground. Here's the backbreaker. Carson Beck threw 3 interceptions, including the costly interception there at about the 44-second mark of the game. And that's what ended up costing him. He was trying to throw the ball to Colby Young. Colby Young's the wide receiver he used to be at Miami, as Clemson fans remembers him. Also, he's the one that scored the first touchdown of the game for Georgia against Clemson. It was on that quick toss-up play. It was not as close to the end zone. Sorry, my eyes are itching. It's driving me nuts. I don't know why it is. Anyway, when he threw that same type of pass, it was to the other side of the field, but it was to Colby Young. It was a jump ball. They were closer to the end zone than what they were here. But he had a freshman guarding him. So why wouldn't you toss the ball up to Colby Young? Why wouldn't you? I think the ball was placed at about the 20-yard line. He threw it up. He thought he could adjust back. I don't know if there was a miscommunication, if the ball was supposed to be placed a little more in, or maybe if the wide receiver is supposed to, his stem was supposed to break in a little more. I don't know. But that cost them. Beck led the team quite well in the second half. The first half is what killed them. And those 3 interceptions, that's what got them. But when you think about Jalen Milroe versus Carson Beck, everybody's leaning heavily Carson Beck. And I get it. But then you throw in there that Milroe threw for 374 yards. He was 27 of 33, 2 passing touchdowns, 1 interception, and then he ran the ball 16 times for 117 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Folks, I want to tell you this. You may not like Jalen Milroe. You may think Jalen Milroe is this or he's that. All I'm going to say, in the current level of football that he's playing right now, tonight, he even though he had a shady second half, he had the better performance. And that's what won the game. That is what won the game. And also having a super freshman, 17-year-old Ryan Williams, 6 receptions, 177 yards, and 1 touchdown. Now, there's a lot of coaches out there, and I get it. Before I even make this criticism, there are a lot of coaches out there who will take a freshman and they'll be like, hey, they're not ready for the game. We need to break them in. That's not what Kalen DeBoer has done with Ryan Williams. Ryan Williams has come out at 17 years old. And tonight he was the one who had the game-winning touchdown. And that touchdown was unbelievable. But Kalen DeBoer didn't say, you know what, Ryan Williams needs a little more time to cook. We don't want to put him in that position. We want to make sure we break him in because that's how we do things. No, they put Ryan Williams out there. And this kid is making a name for himself. I mean, he looks unbelievable. So, I wish more coaches, especially if they trust or if they're really fired up about their big-time freshman wide receivers, instead of saving them for games that doesn't matter, put them in the big games. Let them cook. Let them do their thing. Let them fail. Now, don't let them fail so far to where it hurts them, but at least give them a shot. Ryan Williams has lived up and beyond to the hype. The only other guy that you could think of that you could say has lived up to that much hype and put up astronomical numbers is Jeremiah Smith up at Ohio State. Both those freshmen are showing it out. Now, at Clemson, we have 2 freshmen I really believe in. But some of you Clemson fans are going to get really pissed off at me with what I'm about to say. But Wesco and TJ Moore was not allowed to do anything significant against Georgia. And so I think that they are capable of it. I'm not saying they're as good as Ryan Williams, and I'm not trying to make a comparison like that. I am just saying Ryan Williams has been put in a position to where they're like, hey, we trust you. We know you're just 17 and you're a freshman, but we trust your ability, and we're going to give you a shot here, and the kid has lived up to it. So I was really, really impressed with him. Now, when you think of the SEC, you think of good old-fashioned defense, good old-fashioned fight. Oh, there was a fight, but good old-fashioned defense, no, not so much. Both teams gave up over 500 yards of total offense. Georgia not gave up. I'll just stick with total yardage. Georgia had 25 first downs. Alabama had 21 first downs. Georgia had 519 total yards, 439 of it in the air. When you think of Georgia, you think of running. That's what I think of. They only had 80 yards rushing in this game. Alabama had a more balanced attack. Now, I mean, it wasn't 50-50, but Alabama had 557 total yards, 374 of it in the air, 173 on the ground. The big difference, if you look at the stats for this game, it's not third down conversions, because both teams' third down conversions was not that impressive. Georgia was 3 of 15. Bama was 3 of 11. Georgia was 5 of 5 for fourth down. I mean, my God. I mean, how much more do you want? Alabama was 1 of 2. The big number is turnovers. Alabama was penalized more than Georgia. 10 penalties for 90 yards. Penalties for Georgia, 6 for 50. The big story here, turnovers will kill you. Georgia turned over the ball 4 times, 3 interceptions, 1 fumble. Alabama threw, 1 interception. 1 interception. And so it is, that was the story of the game. But if you miss this game and you're like, Brian, why are you talking about this so much? I'm telling you, you need to at least watch the highlights. But if you can watch a condensed version of this game, I challenge you to. Even as a Clemson fan, this game was incredible. I was watching on YouTube TV, the quad view, so I had the Clemson game on. I had Illinois and Penn State. Had this game on. One other game I can't remember. That tells you how good it was. But this game stuck out like a sore thumb, but in a good way. Bama wins. Both teams have a lot to play for. The season is far from over. You have Texas in the picture now. Ole Miss was supposed to be much better. They lost to Kentucky today, so we'll see exactly what that does. Now, Kentucky fans, you want to even be able to talk to them. In all seriousness, Kentucky fans, they do have a little something to look forward to. The problem is Mark Stoops blowing it like he did against South Carolina just still doesn't make sense. But to each their own. But with the loss of the Ole Miss losing today, you have Oklahoma struggling against Auburn, but they still won the ball game. Things are getting a little more interesting. I really don't think that Oklahoma is a contender in the SEC, but anyway, the point is, with Ole Miss losing today, a team that was seen as a top 7, top 6, maybe even top 5, possibly, with them losing to Kentucky, you have Bama beating Georgia, with Kalen DeBoer being the man, not Nick Saban. Things just got a little more interesting. It really, really did. And so it's just the season is maturing. And as the season matures, you know what's going to happen. It's going to clear up more questions. Right now, at the half, Arizona, and I know things can change. It's just halftime. Arizona's beaten Utah, who's number 10. You don't know how this is all going to shake out. But the point there is we're starting to get a little more clarity here. We're getting a little more clarity. Folks, I'm going to go through here and say hello to a few people. Savannah's in here finally. Georgia loses. Matt, what a game. Roll Tide. Wet Sox, you need to do a collab post game with Jordan and TPC on the Voice of College Football channel. They were supposed to be on my channel last night, and then all hell broke loose with Hurricane Helene, and I was actually supposed to do 2 videos yesterday with someone else, and I was going to have them on, but unfortunately, we're moving it to next week. We're going to talk Clemson football next week. I'm so sorry that I'm yawning, but there we go. Tiger Raven, it's good to see you. What happened, Georgia? Oh man, Lucas Andrew Ryan Williams is special. 17-year-old doing that kid is unreal. Yep, Grafnar, my old buddy down in the Charleston area. Thumbs up. Thanks for supporting the channel. You see that symbol there? He supports the channel. Thank you so much, Grafnar, on a monthly basis. Thank you. Being a defensive coordinator, some of the big plays in the UGA and Bama game made me want to break a clipboard. You're a defensive coordinator, Lucas Andrew? You're a defensive coordinator. You're going to have to drop me a line and let me know where. Normally when you think of SEC and you name these guys out, these 2 teams, you would say, oh man, I mean, it's going to be a defensive battle between both teams over 1,000 yards total. Over 1,000 yards total. The real McCoy, is Bama really that good, or did UGA have a bad night? So does that make Clemson mediocre? The real McCoy, great question. I think that Bama and Georgia are 2 really good teams. I think that they're 2 good teams. I do think that the defense has to get better for both teams. The defense has to get better. Then again, I mean, that was a good old-fashioned shootout tonight. Was that not the highest-ranked matchup of the season so far? So, I mean, for me, I think that they're 2 really good football teams, but the defense has to get better. But then again, it's kind of 2 things can be true at the same time. If so, does that make Clemson mediocre? Clemson has a lot to prove, and that's what I've said over and over and over. I'm glad that Clemson is doing what they're doing now. Clemson has a ton to prove. They just have to prove it week in and week out. That's how I'm treating it. But you can't help, and this is where I lose some Tiger fans, real McCoy, is the last time you played a team that was good, you got your head beat in. You can't shake that. You can't shake that except by going out and beating a good team, and that's where I'm at. Either team has any defense, they ain't winning. Well, crap. It's got to get better. Yes, sir. I'm a defense coordinator for a high school in Kentucky called Lewis County. Well, thank you. Thank you for letting me know. That's awesome. It's awesome. All I have is my phone, no power here. Still interesting to hear UGA has the Blues. They do have the Blues right now. That game was crazy. That game was crazy, Tim Russell. When you get power, and I don't mean that taunting you. I mean, when you get power and you can watch a condensed version of this game, you should. It was nuts. And then when you sit there and you think about the trouble, and I'm not picking at Clemson, I'm just telling the truth. I know Clemson hopefully getting better. You know me, beat a bad team bad and all that much stuff. But I can truly, honestly say, when you sit and watch Alabama run the ball or throw the ball at will against a team that we could only muster up 3 points against. I know it's first game of the year and everybody's going to talk about that, but when you see that, it does bother you as a Clemson fan because you're like, holy snot. Neither one of them are scared of one another. Clemson, when they play offense against a really good football team, they seem scared. I'm hoping that's changed, but yeah. Good answer, buddy. Thank you, Bobby. Well, may there to you. Teams all offense isn't winning at all. They good, but not great. Yeah. Not any good teams left on Clemson's schedule. 100% right. So beat a bad team bad. And hope that you get better so that if you do make it to the 12-team playoff, you're not going to pull like a Florida State or a TCU. Because if you do, what I'm trying to warn Clemson fans about, if you make it to the playoff, yeah, that's something to be excited about. The playoff is triple the size. Triple. You go from 4 to 12 teams in a few years, it's going to be what, 14? If you make it in just because it's been expanded and includes more teams, but you really haven't got that better, but it's just your schedule. I mean, you can't help that the conference sucks. The ACC sucks. It does. And watching Miami last night, Miami fans not talking trash to you, just letting you know. Y'all need to pump the brakes. Cam Ward is very talented, but y'all should have lost last night. And if you make it to the playoff because it's been expanded in size and then because your conference is bad, that does not mean you're a good football team. Doesn't mean you're terrible, but it doesn't mean that you're a championship team or a true contender. And I'm just hoping that Clemson's actually truly getting better at all levels of the game. So if they make it to the playoff, they're not pulling a Florida State or a TCU, because I'm telling you, those seasons don't matter after you have that type of ending. To where you don't meet any upbeat TCU fans wanting to talk about that season, do you? Let me rephrase that. You don't meet any sane TCU fans that wants to talk about that season. Florida State fans, I have some really good Florida State guys come on my channel, and I'm guest on their channel. When they talk about last season, they talk about it with such a grim conclusion to it, because they know what happened in the bowl game. No matter how many players sat out and yada, 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 that should have never happened. And they're like, I don't even want to talk about last season. A season you were undefeated and won your conference, and your bowl game, you get beat by 60 points. They don't want to talk about that. Do we want that for Clemson? I'm going to put this out there for some of you, especially who accuse me of not being a real fan. I'm not going to say you're not a real fan, but you're borderline not looking out for the best interests of the school. You're not looking out for the better interest of the team, the players, the coaches, or even the fan base. So, I'll leave that there. Well, folks, this Alabama game was unbelievable. If you can watch a condensed version of it, you should. At least watch the highlights, but if you can get one of those 30-minute condensed versions, it is unbelievable. Wow. Folks, college football week 5 is it's in the books. It is in the books. I think there's a couple of West Coast teams playing right now, but, it is crazy. We're finding out more and more week in and week out who can hide behind their schedule up to this point and who is being exposed. It's getting very interesting. Folks, I hope you'll subscribe. It is free. It's budget-friendly because it's free. If you do want to support on a monthly basis, I even made that budget-friendly, $3 or $5. The join button's below the video. Unless you're on an iPhone, you may not see it. Most of all, I hope you'll subscribe. You'll drop a line in here and say hello. You take care of yourselves. And if you don't have power right now, I hope you get it soon. Hope you get some gas, some not fart gas. Don't want fart gas. Don't do that. Real gas. It runs an engine. I hope you'll get that, some food, etc. And everybody will stay safe. You take care of yourself. And as always, go Tigers.